The following Cutter Degrassi video contains subject matter that is not proper for all viewers. Please note I try my best to take care of the situation and not have to say it in such a way that is very graphic, but at times it has slipped off. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Hey there, Heather, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to another Cutter Degrassi uh, list, and we're doing the top 25 Degrassi episodes. Now, of course, there will be a worst Degrassi episodes list coming up next week, but the fact of the matter is, I want to do it this week, like the top episodes, and basically give each season their flowers, if you will. So, what ended up happening was I picked the best season episode from each season, and then I had 7 wild cards because there was 18 seasons. There was, of course, Next Gen from seasons 1 to 9, and then seasons 10 to 14 was Degrassi without the tagline, and then they went to Degrassi Next Class for seasons 15 to 18. Well, I call it 15 to 18. Well, Next Class had 4 seasons, but anyway, so each of the seasons had 1 episode and 7 wild cards and all that. So logically, I did the polls list, and there is going to be a bit of a change. What you'll see on the final polls is not the official numbers, like the official ranking, because almost every poll, the last place person actually ended up being so bad, I decided to add the top pick from the other list in there. You get me? Well, I don't think a lot of people get me, but regardless of that. So here we go. Number 25 is Sorry Not Sorry, which won the Next Class Season 1 thing. Well, the fact is that, the Next Class Season 1 was kind of awkward. There were some good episodes, but they just didn't have the after effect of Sorry Not Sorry. It's accumulation of Hunter and his anger towards Maya, Goldie, and the Feminist Club because they kind of shut down his gaming club, even though that Hunter made some bad comments and basically Snake had to go by those comments. So he gets a gun and tries to go after the feminists, but Miles sees him and heads him off at the pass. And then Hunter goes to a loony bin for a few weeks and is welcomed back with open arms. I kind of think that Snake was worried about what Hollingsworth would do to him. Anyway, number 24 is K Thanks Spy, the last ever episode of Degrassi. It was the top episode in season 4 of Next Class. The fact of the matter is, it tried to tie some loose ends, but it just unraveled more and more. The episode deals with Esme's behavior after hurting Sig during prom, the previous episode, and the fact that she can't graduate because she actually inexplicably had missed the last month of school, which meant she couldn't take her exams, which meant that she couldn't get marks. And then Esme pops up with a motorcycle trying to bribe Sig into staying with her, but Sig says, Esme, you're too far gone and you can't do anything. And Esme goes, I'm in love with you. I did everything to keep us together. I even called in a bomb threat. Of course, because she was trying to prevent Maya from being with Sig. Even though Maya was with Sig by accident, and Maya tried to get Sig towards Esme, but Esme didn't know that. Maya did tell Sig she had to get help for Esme because it's kind of a thank you for the fact that Esme did save Maya's life, and we'll get to that episode later. Also, we have the episode where Zoe is valedictorian. Unfortunately, though, her mother refuses to come, I guess because of the shame of her daughter being gay and, you know, a lot of things going on. So she sends Zoe's dad with documents saying you'll need these for college. Zoe delivers her address to, her fellow classmates and says that I don't need my mother. I got friends like you. And then we are shown a montage of some power couples, Zoe and Rasha, Winston and Goldie. Winston actually coming with Miles to Europe, who I thought was Esme in the hospital, but it was Grace because she finally got her lungs to get rid of her cystic fibrosis. And then Sig and Maya are in California. As I said, it didn't tie up everything. Number 23 is OMFG, hashtag OMFG, from season 2 of Next Class. It seems like the Next Class guys didn't really have that good of an episode. It wasn't really my favorite episode of season 2, but it was one that really went there, if you will. To me, OMFG was big because, the bus crash, and Frankie is unsure if she wants to be part of the volleyball team after all the fuss, but she did apologize for everything after realizing what she was wearing rose-colored glasses. So, you know, they had to face Northern Tech in a match at Northern Tech, and then a group of boosters came to see them. But unfortunately, there was a bus crash, and, we wouldn't know much about the after effects till later. Number 22 is Holiday Road. That's the episode in which Emma in season 9 actually ends up admitting her faults, and we find out how bad Emma's got it. A lot of people kind of like Emma or really hate Emma. There's like almost no middle ground. Like in seasons 1 to 4, before the Rex incident, she was annoying AF, and then she was annoying AF in a different light after that. But in season 9, Emma comes back to Degrassi to talk about a project called Re-Cycle for recycling bikes for people in Africa. Kelly is not happy being part of the group because, he's not getting money and all that and not much street cred. Emma says this is for everything. And then Kelly alludes to the fact that your parents are going to find out about something. And then Kelly decides to break up with Emma after a massive fight and says, I'm taking this job up north. My dad got me a job. This is what I want to do. I don't want to do this stupid thing. Leaves Emma high and dry. And then Emma realizes that she's got problems. And then when Claire asks her about college, she says that it's a lonely experience and basically you spend a lot of time chasing friends instead of grades. And then Emma decides not to go back to Smithdale because it reminds her of Kelly and she can't do it anymore. She admits sheepishly to Spike and Snake that with the fact that Manny's gone to Hollywood and Liberty pledged a sorority, I thought that she went to pre-law, but that wasn't right off the bat. The fact is that Emma was lost and alone. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if Emma's alone at the dorm, well, with Kelly, I guess she's technically alone in the dorm if she went back. But yeah, her codependency was not really the greatest. And then, of course, she marries Spinner later on in the season. Number 21 is Beat It, that won the season 9 poll. So the fact of the matter is that Riley was trying to prevent himself from coming out of the closet, but Zane's power just too much. Riley gets mad when people call him homosexual and all that. Riley, like Marco, comes from a background of a European background that basically is not really good towards gay people. So maybe that's what it is. His mom is not accepting him at first, but he finally gets her love later on in this stuff. Yeah, the son's in the worst possible place. And all that. If I turn myself around. Yeah, the essence of taping this when I'm going to tape this. So logically, yeah. Hang on one sec. Give you a bit of humor. It's kind of also because of the fact that I have a limited time by taking this video and all that because the sun's going to really go through my windowsill in the basement. So all that. Number 20 is Give Me One Reason from season 14. It wasn't the best episode from season 14, but it was a pretty good episode. It's the episode in which Claire finds out that her and Eli's baby doesn't have a heartbeat, which means that she has miscarried. And that's the first Degrassi instance of a miscarriage ever. And Claire and Eli talk at the Canada US border about the fact that they'll never get to know the child and all that. And they mourn over the loss of Adam, who they were going to name it after. And then, of course, the next episode's when Claire finds out about Pill spying on her and breaks the cameras. Number 19, I can do this right. Do the 9 right. Can you say 9? All right, number 19 is hashtag Throwback Thursday from season 2 of Next Class. This is the 500th episode in Degrassi history, and of course, you got to put the alumni in, and they did. They had a lot of alumni. Paige came back, Marco came back, Spinner, Emma, Manny, not Manny. Well, she was mentioned, but she wasn't on stage. Liberty, Holly J, Mo, even, and Craig. Yeah, those are the ones who were seen and not heard. But anyway, in the background of the Degrassi alumni thing comes the whole Black Lives Matter thing about the fact that Frankie should be massively punished for her role in the Degrassi poster. Although it must be said that the cheerleaders did laugh at her drawings and all that, and nobody caused a fuss, not even Shay. So basically, they were leaving Frankie out to dry. Frankie just couldn't apologize to save her butt. Everyone wanted her dismissed from the volleyball team, obviously. And then there calls for Simpson to do something about it, about maybe systemic racism, because of the fact that Tiny got suspended for hurting somebody, trying to protect Shay and Lola's integrity. And basically, they say that maybe it was targeted because of his skin color. But they finally get Simpson to admit they need to talk about it. And I think that's just what the goal was. Frankie tries to run away, and then the next episode, she realizes she's done some bad stuff. So she comes back and apologizes for real skis. That's good. Number 18 is Finally. Finally is the season finale in season 14, which we were assuming was going to be the last ever Degrassi episode then. So what ends up happening at Degrassi is that this is Claire's graduating class and all that. And Claire doesn't know what to do with herself. Does she go back to Eli? Does she take a gap year? She doesn't know what she's doing. Simpson actually helps her realize she needs to take a gap year. But the big story was when Drew tries to have a proposal to Becky, gets embarrassed, gets shot down, and then worst of all, Pill prevents him from going to prom. He sits out prom until he learns that Dallas misbooked the prom boat, and it was actually a year later. Audra prods Drew to fix the situation, and so Drew takes stuff from the school and throws the prom at the dot, which is a success until Pill basically is upset and tells Drew to out other students. He refuses, and she decides not to let him walk the stage and says that I have to make an example of you to the other students and the newer students coming in. How is that going to work? And the newer students, how are they going to find out? So basically, Audra is proud of Drew, and the seniors didn't want Drew not to cross the stage, so they played with Pill's heart, and Pill relents. And then, of course, that was probably the end of Degrassi until we got the season 14 summer show, and then we got Degrassi Next Class. But it's important to note that this might have been the final straw for Pill not to come back as Degrassi principal. I think Snake was cleared of everything, which obviously meant he had to come back to be principal. But think about it. It's like the whole thing with Pill and her policies, and Audra has her role in the PTA and telling the school board everything. I think that was just basically the last straw. I know that. Number 17 is, I did that. Sorry. 17 is Eye of the Tiger. Eye of the Tiger is the episode in season 4. It wasn't the best season 4 one, but it's the episode in which Jimmy comes back from the hospital rehabbing for 3 months, as he claims it. Spinner is still racked with guilt over the fact that he may have got Jimmy shot, and I think he did. Well, Spinner didn't know that Rick had a gun. But the fact of the matter was that Spinner tries so much to get Jimmy to like him and all that, and then Spinner finally decides, for the friendship's sake, to tell Jimmy the truth. The school basically shuns him. Manny breaks up with him. Jay laughs at him, saying, "I knew you couldn't keep your mouth shut." And Spinner says, "Jimmy deserved to know." So basically, Spinner's now an outcast, and Jimmy tells him off, saying, "We're not friends, because what type of friend would push a would be having a friend get shot?" I mean, Spinner went along with Jay and all that to try to get Rick off their scent, to get everyone off their scent. I mean, Spinner did question why he was with Jay in the first place. But unfortunately, though, Spinner does decide to confess everything to Hatzalakos and implicates Jay, but not Alex, because he thinks that Alex should stay out of this mess. Jay, of course, gets expelled like Spinner, and Spinner has to do a redemption song in season 5, which he does to quite effect. And the new number 16 is Take a Bow. Season 11 needed an episode, and Take a Bow was there. It's accumulation of Fiona's problems, with Bobby, and then her drinking to cope with the problems, even though Bobby does get some kind of trouble. Fiona's alcoholism almost ruins her, and she has to fix things. And then I think that's kind of when she fell in love with Imogen. And you're thinking, well, Fiona's into guys and all that. Why would she turn the other cheek? Well, it's possible that because of how Bobby and other boys may have screwed her, including her own twin brother Declan, Fiona just couldn't trust men and then went to Imogen and all that. I mean, Fiona had the attraction to Declan, like joined at the hip before he finally got her to realize she couldn't do that. Number 15 is Mother and Child Reunion. So, Mother and Child Reunion takes place, it's the first ever episode of Degrassi. This episode of Degrassi happens. Um, this was the accumulation of the fact that Degrassi CBC's Journal Vision, a a teen talk show, actually put people of Degrassi for a high school reunion in 1999, and then they pitched the idea of maybe continuing the story, and then they find out about Spike's daughter Emma, and then maybe make her the main character, which they did in 2001. But weirdly enough, CBC didn't pick it up. CTV did. I guess because of the topics, CBC, being the government network, if you will, didn't want to get into trouble. So basically, what ends up happening is that Emma is on the computer talking to a boy named Jordan and all that, but Manny, JT, and Toby think that she's in over her head, and so she goes to a hotel to meet Jordan. In the meantime, Degrassi High has some kind of reunion show of old Degrassi High people from the past, like Joey, Caitlin, and Lucy, among others. In a scene that the Americans didn't see first time, but we Canadians did, Wheels comes by to apologize for the incident that got Lucy in the hospital during school's out and put Wheels in prison and all that. In the meantime, Emma goes to see Jordan, but it's a middle-aged man. Fortunately for her, Manny, JT, and Toby do some amateur sleuthing, and they basically sleuth and get the guy and all that. Emma then has to admit her mistakes, but this starts her internalization problems and all that. Number 14 is Believe. It's the season 13 episode which saw Zoe's rape trial go to the courts. Zoe accuses Luke Baker and his friend Neil of taking advantage of her, and there's a trial. Worst of all, Becky finds the information that her brother did do it, and worst of all, Mr. and Mrs. Baker tried to pressure Becky into telling them that Luke could not have done it, and all that. Becky is torn towards loyalties and all that, but then realizes she had to do something about it. And so on the witness stand, she does confirm everything and describes everything in detail, basically going against her parents. The fact of the matter was that because Luke even told her when they were talking before she goes on the witness stand, Becky knew she couldn't lie and all that. So unfortunately for her, well, Luke is put in juvie for 2 years. His hockey career basically is stalled. And basically, Mr. and Mrs. Baker are ashamed. They basically freeze Becky. Then they freeze Becky and all that. Yeah, they freeze Becky for a while. And, Becky's upset. But I mean, you got to realize that Becky had to do it in a sense because she learned that, she had to be a good Christian. And her parents were massive hypocrites. Worst of all, I think her dad may have lost his job as minister because of this whole thing after it may have gone out that he pressured Becky into things. But yeah, Zoe kind of got her answers, but didn't really get her answers. And then by season 14, she becomes a bitch again. Don't know why. Number 13 is Take on Me. Take on Me is the episode which, in season 3, it's the Breakfast Club homage, as Radich as Principal Fernan and has to deal with 5 troublemaking students and all that, and try to assert his control and all that. Sean was put in detention because he questioned Radich. Hazel was in because she sheepishly announced that she was looking at some inappropriate sites. Ellie was in detention a lot because she cut class, even though that her problems could be attributed to her mental being after her father is in Afghanistan and her mother is an alcoholic. uh, Toby and Jimmy are put in detention because Jimmy wanted Toby to change Jimmy's grade so that he could go to the concert, but Toby got caught. So what ends up happening is that they bond and all that. This episode actually brought 2 pairings. It gave us the Jimmy and Hazel pairing and the Sean and Ellie pairing and all that. Poor Toby just had to get shafted. I mean, you can't have a love triangle with Toby for any reason. Radich, of course, plays off his Principal Ferdinand thing to the hilt. And Snake comes back from his leukemia and tells them that their kids are paying for their mistakes. Radich then sheepishly decides to allow them to leave for the rest of the day. But with the whole thing is that Radich had a point of putting them in detention for their crimes. Heck, even Toby and Jimmy could have gotten in trouble for criminally for their breaking into computers, but Radich could have just easily given them Monday to Friday detention and poof, game set match. But I think he wanted to assert his dominance. Hold on. Number 12 is Eye of the Tiger. No, sorry. Number 12 is My Body's a Cage. From season 10, when we're introduced to Adam, who became the first trans character in Degrassi history, and one of the first in Canadian history. I'm not sure what number in Canadian history, but anyway. So Adam is secretly this girl named Gracie who wants to be a boy, maybe because of her stepbrother Drew, because Drew and Adam are stepbrothers, technically. So Adam feels the pressures of his family, especially Audra, to be back to being Gracie. Although it must be said that I think that Audra was worried about how her parents would feel about Gracie turning into Adam. But that's still no excuse. Nevertheless, Adam harms himself after being outed and all that. Although Claire and Eli take a shining and are okay with Adam transitioning from female to male, especially Claire, even though that she was supposed to be in this Christian goody goody family. But after learning what effects being Gracie is to Adam, Audra backs off her tone and basically accepts Adam for who he is. And number 11 is causing a commotion from season 8. It didn't do well in the whole 1 to 10 poll, but causing a commotion was massive because it's the one that saw Claire stand up to Connor after Connor gets expelled in season 8. Connor has been doing some bad behaviors and all that with his desk lamp and his assistants to have a desk lamp and making Principal Shep trip over it. Everyone goes solidarity with Connor, but then Daryl throws attention, and then Connor, for some reason, taps his pencil, annoys Allie, and then goes after Allie. I don't blame Shep one bit for getting mad at him, but then Simpson tells Claire that he's diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, and basically his body and mind think a whole lot differently. So Claire decides to take it upon herself to help Connor deal with this and basically out Shep for being a bad principal. She gets an opportunity as Shep is named Principal of the Year, which is like, why is he Principal of the Year? He barely even made half a year for Degrassi and all that. Maybe they wanted to give him the award for his job with Lakehurst, but couldn't because it burned in season 7. Or was it that they probably were going to give it to Hatzlackles, but she was on leave because of her sick mother in Regina and all that? I think that's probably what it is. For a football team, yeah, right. So anyway, Shep gets caught talking about Connor saying that and calling Claire a little bitch. A lot of people said, well, Claire was justified being called a little bitch, but I doubt that highly. This is season 8 Claire. This is not like over dramatic Claire. Did you flip a switch and erase me from your memory? This is basically the writers trying to get Claire to be like Emma, being the helpful one, but Claire helping for the right reasons and not, being overreactionary like Emma. But the fact of the matter is, they didn't make Claire like Emma. They gave Claire all these storylines that she had to fight off and dodge. Not even Emma had that. But anyway, she gets her mission, and Shep is outed, and everyone walks out on him. He's forced to go to sensitivity training, and then he comes back in another episode that I will be talking about in the top 10. But anyway, yeah, Asperger's and all that. It's kind of cool for representation of Asperger's syndrome. And yes, I know people say you shouldn't say that because of that. It's that German scientist who did some inappropriate experiments. But the fact is, that's how I got diagnosed and all that. Yes, I can say I'm autistic, but I've been living with this thing for 2 decades. Well, it's been diagnosed for 2 decades. So, that's the way it is with me. All right, here we go. Top 10 time. Number 10, and who won he won, this one won the 11 to 15, but I decided to bump it up because of how poorly Causing Commotion died. But number 10 is Tears Are Not Enough from season 2. It's kind of weird because this is the Craig storyline, and the start of the Craig storyline actually beat it out. But yeah, Tears Are Not Enough is the accumulation of Craig's storyline. Craig's dad comes back into his life promising he's changed, but he hasn't. And Joey tells Craig that his dad got involved in the car crash. And probably because he was so mad at Craig, he crashed his car on purpose or by accident. You know, he's dead. Albert is dead. Craig should be happy that his tormentor is dead, but he has mixed feelings, especially at the funeral. He acts out in such a way everyone's shocked. Craig ends up winning Luau King at the prom, even though that it was probably out of sympathy because his dad died. And Raj told um, Craig that he didn't have to come for the rest of the year. He understood, and he wouldn't fail Craig. It wouldn't be right. But yeah, Craig and Ashley win this award, and then Craig hallucinates that his dad is in the audience, so he tears down some stuff. Raj tells everyone to leave him be, and then Terry talks to Craig about the fact that she lost her mother while she was at a birthday party, and they bond. And Craig finally decides to let go of his feelings, which is great. Number 9 is hashtag I'm Sleep from the Next Class season 3. Remember when I said about the whole bus crash thing and my defense of the previous year? Well, this was accumulation. Moira just couldn't get it out of her head about the problems, especially her worried that Tristan being in a coma. And like Tristan, she should never be worried about Tristan. Tristan used Maya like a napkin. But the fact of the matter is that she finally decides she needed to end it all. So she finds an abandoned bus, gets pills from her mother's stash, and then takes them and then sits on the bus with earphones, listening to music. as a tribute to Cam. Unfortunately, though, she fails in 30 minutes, and she basically says, "What am I doing wrong?" And then decides to jump off the roof. She sends notes to people, and then luckily Sig and Esme are on the roof, and they find Maya, who finally had the pills kick in. And basically, Esme tells Sig, "Don't make her throw up. She might choke on her own vomit." And then using Esme's experiences, Maya will be a-okay. But worst of all, that episode ended on a sour note as Tristan in his voice box said he wants to go for pizza. Everyone does and leaves Maya high and dry. And it's like, what the hell? But yeah, that was just terrible and all of that. Number 8 is Standing in the Dark from season 7. I know it was a kind of a tie, but I'm going to go Standing in the Dark at number 8. So this episode was when Darcy gets taken advantage of in season 7. Her relationship with Peter is still happening. Hatzalakos is okay with Darcy being with Peter because, Darcy, I mean, Hatzalakos is Peter's mom, but Darcy's parents don't want her anywhere near Peter. Obviously, Peter is a bad apple and all that. Everyone tries to warn Darcy about being with Peter in the first place, but she refuses to, and Peter basically said they're all jealous. So they decided to go on a ski weekend with Manny and, you know, do the stuff. And then Darcy inadvertently gets her drink spiked by some guy and then taken advantage of on the couch. Darcy is upset over what could happen if everything gets found out. So Darcy goes into a period of self loathing and almost takes herself in the girls' shower. And also, after accusing Snake of inappropriate things, but found out she didn't, she decides to jump off the roof, but Manny saves her. And basically, she has to admit her faults. Of course, Standing in the Dark also has the subplot in which Lakehurst actually has to move in with Degrassi because their school burnt that badly so that, they couldn't inhabit it. So basically, Degrassi has to share with Lakehurst after all the whole JT situation, which I will get to in another episode in this list, and the fact that Toby is upset by it. Toby then basically said that maybe some Lakehurst students aren't as bad as they seem to be, and that they're friends that you haven't met. Good boy. Number 7 is Jane Says. Oh, I should do it like that. Yeah, number 7 is Jane Says from season 8. It's the episode. Remember when I was talking about Shep and sensitivity training? This was the episode when she came back for the first time, and the school didn't want him around. But he basically says he's willing to level with everyone and wants Jane back on the football team if she wants. So basically, he's just trying to get the students back on his side. And then it says there's an alumni football game between some alumni people and the actual football team. Jane wants Lucas to participate because, it'd be good for him. Although he's not an alumni because he dropped out of school. Lucas is shown have some indifference with Izzy, which sucks. I hate that. But anyway, Jane's dad's now going to be back in Jane's life. Unfortunately, though, Jane has her reservations against him, but she can't figure out why until it finally clicks with her that he had his way with her and molested her while dressing her to go to sleep. Lucas was in the other room and didn't know anything. Lucas then basically yells at Jane for trying to ruin his dad because he wants a relationship with his dad. But then Jane clues him in, and then he realizes everything and, prevents Jane's didn't want their dad getting near Jane again. And also, Jane's dad, it's a little too comfortable with Izzy. So Lucas, realizing that, decides to break off the relationship between him and his father. And then everyone goes to family therapy. Lucas admits his faults. Jane basically gives him a pass, saying, "We were kids, and you're here now." And worst of all, this was the last episode Lucas was in, or even mentioned. I don't think he was mentioned, post Jane Says. No one said, "Hey, Jeff, you're wrong." But this was stupid. I wanted Lucas to have some type of redemption arc. Maybe he didn't because of the fact that, when Mia goes to Paris, it's like Izzy's going to live with her. And, what's Lucas's role? Probably nothing. Number 6 is Our Lips Are Sealed from season 5. This was the episode in which Emma's eating disorder comes to a head. Spike and Snake are broken up because of Snake's kiss towards Hatzelackles, and Spike, of course, being upset that Snake wanted Emma to keep the secret. The house is a shambles. Emma is stressed trying to pick up Snake's dead weight, if you will, and then finds out that Manny wants to lose weight for a role, even though that Manny was not supposed to um, audition for roles and all that for acting because of the thing with Snake and living with the Simpsons. But the fact of the matter is that Emma joins her and tries to get Manny to lose weight and all that. Manny loses the weight she needed to, but Emma still scolds her. And Manny breaks off from the diet saying, I can't do it. You're taking control of this. Emma's like, but I have to. No, she's not. Fortunately, though, Snake and Spike reconcile, and you're thinking, well, that's it. Emma's problems are over. But the worst part is she's still keeping the secret that she's with Peter, even though that Peter put Manny in this bad situation. I think in the back of Emma's head, because Peter's situation, Manny now lives with Emma, and then Emma can boss Manny around and all that and get control of Manny. The fact of the matter is that, you know, of all that, Emma's dieting habits are really worrying everyone. Manny threatens to out Emma for that, but Emma blurts out that she's with Peter because that's why she couldn't eat and all that. And of course, Manny is shocked why Peter and Emma would hook up in the first place. I guess loneliness, whatever. Anyway, they stage an intervention for Emma. Emma does not take it well and then blasts everybody. Calls Manny a drunk chick. Peter, a guy who takes advantage of drunk chicks, and yells at Snake for kissing his mother, as in Peter's mother. She doesn't go after Spike. She probably wants to. But the fact of the matter is that Emma gets so pissed off she decides to throw Manny out. But then she suffers a panic-induced attack, and she's in the hospital and vows to beat the eating disorder because everyone's worried about her. And of course, the roots of the eating disorder may have been in season 4 with the whole time stand still situation, in which Emma almost dies by Rick's gun, and that Emma hasn't been herself, and she's just trying to cling on to people because she can cling on to Sean, that type of stuff. Number 5 is Pride from season 3. Pride's the episode in which Marco finally decides to come out of the closet to everybody, to his friends and all that. Ellie cannot be Marco's beard, as they call it. She calls it because that's just not there. But the fact of the matter is that, Marco decides to come out to everyone. He comes out to Spinner. Of course, Spinner's trying to hook up Marco up with Hazel, but Marco refuses to, saying that I need to go taste my mom's pasta sauce. And Spinner's like, you broke off a date with a hot girl from Degrassi for your mom's pasta sauce? It doesn't make sense. Yes, it does. Tell me why. Because I'm stupid. Because I'm gay. And he comes out. Spinner writes homophobic stuff in the bathroom. Jimmy calls him out on it. And Jimmy basically says that Spinner is prejudiced. Marco tries to go to Ellen's hockey game, but gets jumped by some people. And fortunately, though, Jimmy is there to fend off things and help Marco out. Everyone gets mad at Spinner and distances himself. Spinner, with time and space, actually realizes that he's a jerk and wants to help Marco out. That scene was big. They even recreated it years later, which is funny. Number 4 is Rock This Town. This is the one that JT dies in season 6. Excuse me, a burp. So anyway, in season 6, there's a Degrassi Lakehurst rivalry because JT is dating Mia, who was from Lakehurst, and whose ex-boyfriend Nick, the one before Lucas, actually is jealous and then decides to attack Mia and all that and start this whole Degrassi Lakehurst rivalry and all that. Lakehurst just gets a little bit too pissy with Degrassi, and all that. And JT basically is upset by it. Rock This Town also had the fact that Liberty was going to celebrate her birthday. Manny and Emma were going to throw Liberty a birthday party. Manny was trying to get over the fact that she couldn't have Craig. So they have the birthday party, but unfortunately, Danny and Derek spread it like wildfire. Too many people are in the house. Of course, there's a lot of issues going on. Emma wants to finally lose her virginity to Sean, but gets too drunk and sleeps through everything. The fact of the matter is that, you know, JT does question why he's with Mia. He should be with Liberty and all that, but calls Mia a meatball sub and Liberty oatmeal. That kind of is a bad allegory, if you will. But the fact is that, he does what he does. And he looks for Liberty, but then Drake Lampley, the redhead, decides to stab JT in the aorta with Johnny DeMarco watching close by and being shocked. JT bleeds out. There's no way they can save him. Liberty does find him and screams for help. And it was just ugly how JT died and all that. Now, of course, at first, when we found out about this, we found out that Ryan Cooley, the guy who played JT, wanted to go out in a gory fashion because he was going to college. But we soon find out that that was not the case. They were probably going to drop JT quickly. So he just like, oh, I just don't care anymore. Unfortunately, this would lead to a lot of backlash, aftermath with Liberty being called a robot by Mia, Toby being close to Manny, I mean, close to Liberty because of trauma, trauma bonding, if you will. And Toby finally saying that JT wanted to be with Liberty, not Mia. And even Emma had some involvement in the aftermath. I mean, it had to be there. I mean, yes, she did some stupid stuff and all that. But the fact of the matter is, it was at her house at an event that probably should never happen, steps from her home. Like, she had to freak. She had a right to freak and all that. And then her codependency and all that stuff, her PTSD came back, trying to keep Manning living with her and trying to keep control of things. I think that her PTSD came back. And I think they finally had to have her ask for help and all that. And then Emma learns to let go of Manny in such a way. Number 3 is When Doves Cry. This is when we see Craig for the first time. Craig is this guy who's into, and I cannot pronounce this for the life, photography. You know what I'm talking about. He likes taking photos. So he takes pictures of Emma with this girl named Angie, who is Joey's daughter. But it's like, why is he taking pictures of them? I know that Emma, is babysitting Angie for Joey and refuses a big payday from Joey. But Joey says he'll make sure Emma gets rewarded. Craig gets abused by his father for almost every silly little thing, and he's living in fear and all that. Yeah, he's a new student at Degrassi who Emma and Manny woo over. Craig's mental state is not talked about much until the episode when he's with Sean near train tracks, and then he plays chicken with a train. Fortunately, he jumps away, and Sean's like, "Are you crazy?" Sean and Emma do pair up to try to tell Joey that Craig's a danger and all that. That Craig hangs out with Angie for a reason. Well, Craig did get $3,000 to replace his broken camera that his father broke, but he wants to take Angie to BC. And it's like, why would Craig do that? Want Angie to come from the British Columbia? But the fact of the matter for Craig is that, Joey finally finds out that Craig's dad is abusive to him, and Angie even pipes in. Craig is found at his mother's gravestone. One thing though, it was Julia Manning. It was like, Julia, wasn't that Joey's wife? Yes, it was Joey's wife that died of an illness. So Craig is Angie's stepbrother. Of course, Julia Manning left Albert and Craig to be with Joey. Of course, Albert's upset and basically uses Craig as a punching bag for his emotions because, he can't have Julia and all that. And of course, as I said earlier in this list, Craig loses Albert because Albert got fed up and all that. And Craig starts his emotional downturn. Number two is bittersweet sympathy. And it was bittersweet because this was the episode in which Cam did what he did. So it was a massive accumulation for Cam. He was living 10 hours away from home. He was in Toronto for major junior hockey and not part of the school hockey team, as people allude to. But it's not a school hockey team, it was a major junior team. Because in Canada and in a few US cities near the border, players play on junior hockey teams hoping to get the attraction from scouts in the NHL and all that and get drafted. So Cam was this hotshot who was from Kapuskasing in Northern Ontario and was 10 hours away from home. He was bitter, he was lonely, and Maya seemed to be the only one that could cheer him up. But Sig has a jealousy streak towards Cam, especially after he gets too close to Maya, because Sig wants Maya. Sig gets Cam into deep trouble with Principal Simpson and thinks he's got Maya, and then Cam and Maya have a have a moment, and then Cam will meet Maya in front of the school to apologize and to give back her stuffed doll Hoot. Unfortunately, Sig sees Cam before Maya and tells Cam to get out of Maya's life forever. Typical jealous boyfriend material. So Cam just that. Eli and Claire were going to have a picnic by the JT York greenhouse, but then Eli sees the body and tells Claire, "Don't go anywhere near it. Call for help." Of course, the body of Cam, we don't know what exactly happened to him, but it's kind of mutilated in any shape or form. Like a lot of people said, oh, he slashed himself, he drank, or he cut himself, or he just hung himself. But what if he drank some garden chemicals, if there were garden chemicals in there, and then under the influence of chemicals, he slashed himself, or, well, he mutilated himself? The fact of the matter, guys, is that it's possible. I put this out because as a guy who knows about garden chemicals and all that for the past like 4 years working in the garden center at Canadian Tire, I should know about toxicity and all that. So logically, that was a key thing. And people said, maybe you have a point there. So yeah, the hockey team is upset. Dallas almost jumps off the roof before Bianca, no, was it Fiona who saved them? Someone saved her. Yeah, I think it was Fiona. Saying you have a lot to live for. Everyone's upset. Maya seemed to be indifferent after Cam died, and people were questioning Maya's state of mind. When Maya said that, he was selfish for killing himself, I would have helped him. She does have a point, guys. But yeah, basically, this Cam thing hung around Emma like a bad cloud over her head. For years, she thought she could get rid of her problems by saving Miles from his father in season 14 and get away from the Cam thing, but it came back to her. The bus crash brought those feelings back, and she almost was at the point of no return. Almost, but she wasn't. And number one, no doubt, everyone, I figured that was going to be number one, was, of course, Time Stand Still season 4. I mean, I would have picked it number one, and I did. Well, I picked it because myself, for the fact that, it was the episode that Degrassi really went there and all that. It's the episode that everyone knows about it. It's the episode in which I have spent lots of time deconstructing it to the point of obsession. So this was, of course, the accumulation of Rick being abused after coming back to Degrassi with seemingly no strings attached. Raj basically screwed up that thing and had to let him back because of no criminal charges. I think it's fair, but did Raj want Rick back, or was he forced to take him back? The fact of the matter is that, Rick was back, no strings attached. The students were upset with the fact that Rick was back and the fact that the faculty were doing nothing about it. So they decided to take matters in their own hands and abuse Rick. Emma gets involved with an Orange Ribbon campaign, which was supposed to help domestic violence victims, but it just added fuel to the fire and helped the students have a cause to get behind to beat up on Rick. Of course, Emma stops everything from happening, but she gets outcast. She's on the quiz bowl team with Toby, Jimmy, and Rick. So, Rick now has easy access to Emma and all that. Rick actually decides to take retaliation for once and spray paints his tormentors' cars. They know it's Rick and they have to find a way to get rid of Rick once and for all. So they concoct a plan using paint and feathers that Rick will have dumped on him, and everyone will laugh at him. So they tell Rick these lies. The last three bullies, like Spinner, Jay, and Alex, were the last ones left. Everyone else didn't want to do it anymore. So they get Rick to think everything was cool, but then they did the painted feathers. He gets embarrassed and all that. He tries to kiss Emma while wearing painted feathers and all that. We get a glimpse into Rick's home life in that his father is a traveling salesman, his mother is blissfully ignorant and basically maybe coddling him. She did say she wanted Rick to go to a new school, but Rick shooed her off. But yeah, everything happened, and then Raditch finally decides to step in and severely punish people for what they did to him. All that. Jimmy and Spinner have a literal fight on the basketball court because Spinner stupidly decides to tell Jimmy the truth about the evil genius himself who concocted the painted feathers. Rick comes back to the school ready to shoot Paige, but fortunately doesn't. Paige calms him down, and then he puts the gun in his locker. And then he decides to clean himself off in the bathroom, but that's when Spinner and Jay go into the bathroom, and Jay comes up with a plan to alleviate Spinner's guilt and basically clear them both out and blame Jimmy for everything, knowing that Rick was in the stall. So Rick takes the gun out of his locker, shoots Jimmy, and let's be fair, that if Rick really wanted to kill Jimmy right there and then, he would have purposely aimed at Jimmy and would not have turned his head and shot. But he does that to Jimmy and then conveniently finds Emma, who's alongside Sean and Toby, and basically wants to take down Emma for spurring his advances. Sean does his job to try to calm down Rick, but Rick says he's at the point of no return. Tries to shoot Emma, but the gun, we find out, was shot by Sean the next episode. Of course, there's a lot of anguish and aftermath. Even Joey and Caitlin get involved in the aftermath, even though their storyline, the subplot about Joey's house was that it was a good one. It would have fit in a lot of other episodes, but this one just had to be in the one that Time Stand Still was first billing. Of course, lots of people are angry at themselves. Spinner wants to go to the police with everything, but Jay tells him to keep quiet. Hazel's upset that Jimmy got shot. Obviously, that was her boyfriend. Everyone is shocked what happened. And of course, we all know about Snake and Raditch and their blow offs. One of them was in a deleted scene that should have been included, and then the second one was the one in the media room. Raditch basically says, how was I supposed to know someone was going to overreact to those spilled paint? And he has a point. But Snake says, what happened to the foresight? What happened to protecting Rick at all costs? Basically, Snake's upset that Raditch refuses to take accountability for their actions. Snake even takes accountability, even though that he has the right not to. So then, of course, comes the poignant scene of everyone watching the news and all that, and trying to find answers. Of course, the aftermath is massive to everybody involved. Sean goes back to Wasaga Beach to deal with his PTSD, leaving Ellie and Emma high and dry. JT goes after Toby for being Rick's seemingly only friend, but before many choose him out, and JT realizes he needs Toby. Emma gets involved because, she doesn't tell anyone about her problems. Her PTSD is still there, and it seemed like everyone was walking around eggshells on her, and she couldn't cope with it because she was in a situation she couldn't control. And then, of course, Raj got booted for his involvement or lack of involvement, if you will, with the Rick situation by shooting Rick off. Rick wasn't straightforward to Raditch. If he was, Raj would have had to take Rick seriously. Know that Raj was a concrete thinker. And the school board reassigned him. They probably couldn't fire him because they kind of figured they would have been in trouble too. But the fact of the matter is that, Raj was turfed, rightfully so, and Spinner had to live with the consequences until he finally told Jimmy and I of the tiger. Jay didn't care about his repercussions. Alex never got repercussions because the guys kept their mouth shut. So, yeah, that's how things are. And of course, Jimmy in the wheelchair. Who can forget? But anyway, thanks for watching this 55-minute video about dealing with subject matter, and great Degrassi episodes. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.